At the top of the world lies an empire of ice, Greenland, a vast, remote, and seemingly silent landmass. But beneath this frozen surface, a geopolitical storm is brewing, threatening to shatter alliances and redraw the map of global power. The fuse was lit by a single audacious declaration from the world's leading superpower, a declaration that an island and its people were for sale. This is not a story about a simple real estate transaction. It is a story about strategic dominance, untold riches, and a clash of wills that pits a modern superpower against the very foundations of international law. The world is on notice. The new Cold War has begun, and its first battleground is ice. Part 1. The United States, security ambition, strategic gain, and global risk for Washington. Greenland is not merely an island. It is a strategic asset that sits at the crossroads of history, geography, and future warfare. From the American perspective, the logic appears brutally straightforward. Greenland occupies a unique position between North America and Europe, directly along the shortest flight path for intercontinental ballistic missiles. During the Cold War, this reality transformed Greenland into a cornerstone of U.S. early warning systems, a role it continues to play today through the Pituffik Space Base, formerly known as Thule. In an era defined by renewed great power rivalry, especially with Russia and China, that strategic relevance has only intensified. The positive impact for the United States, if it were to gain greater control or influence over Greenland, would be immense. Militarily, it would reinforce America's Arctic dominance, strengthening missile detection, space surveillance, and control over emerging northern sea routes. As climate change melts Arctic ice, shipping lanes once locked in ice are slowly opening, promising shorter routes between Asia, Europe, and North America. Whoever shapes access to these routes shapes the future of global trade. For U.S. defense planners, Greenland is no longer a frozen outpost. It is a forward operating position in a new geopolitical theater. Economically, the attraction runs even deeper. Greenland holds vast, untapped reserves of rare earth elements, materials essential for advanced weapon systems, renewable energy technology, electric vehicles, and semiconductors. Today, China dominates the global supply chain for rare earths. For Washington, reducing that dependency is a national priority. Securing influence over Greenland's resources could significantly strengthen America's industrial and technological resilience, offering long-term strategic benefits far beyond the Arctic. Yet these potential gains are inseparable from serious negative consequences. The most immediate risk lies in the language used by American leadership, publicly framing Greenland as something the United States needs, while refusing to dismiss military options, undermines the principles of sovereignty and alliance solidarity that Washington has long claimed to defend. Denmark is not an adversary, it is a NATO ally. Greenland is a self-governing territory with its own elected leadership. When threats, even rhetorical ones, enter the conversation, they fracture trust at the very foundation of Western alliances. There is also the danger of strategic overreach. Any attempt, direct or indirect, to force a change in Greenland's status could trigger a crisis within NATO itself. The alliance is built on the principle that members do not threaten one another. If the United States were perceived as coercing or destabilizing Danish sovereignty, it would create a precedent with devastating implications. Other global powers would quickly exploit that contradiction, weakening the moral authority of Western institutions worldwide. Moreover, America's aggressive posture risks accelerating the very competition it seeks to contain. Russia has already expanded its Arctic military footprint. China labels itself a near-Arctic state and has invested heavily in polar research and infrastructure. If the U.S. moves too forcefully, Greenland could become not a stabilizing stronghold, but a catalyst for militarization, turning the Arctic into another arena of permanent confrontation. There is also a domestic political dimension. Statements about acquiring Greenland resonate with certain audiences as symbols of strength and decisiveness. But symbolic politics can carry real-world costs. Diplomatic fallout, strained alliances, and long-term instability may outweigh short-term political gains. History shows that strategic assets obtained through pressure rather than partnership often become liabilities. The solution from a strategic standpoint lies not in domination, but in cooperation. The United States already enjoys extensive military access in Greenland through agreements with Denmark and NATO. Expanding joint defense initiatives, investing transparently in Arctic infrastructure, and partnering with Greenlandic authorities on resource development would preserve American interests without violating international norms. Influence achieved through trust is far more durable than control pursued through coercion. Ultimately, the U.S. faces a defining choice. It can approach Greenland as a prize to be secured or as a partner in a rapidly changing Arctic order. One path strengthens alliances and legitimacy. The other risks isolation, escalation, and the slow erosion of the very system that has long underpinned American power. Greenland, sovereignty, identity, and the cost of becoming strategic. For Greenland, the renewed global attention is both an opportunity and a profound existential challenge. Long portrayed as a remote, frozen land on the margins of world affairs, Greenland now finds itself thrust into the center of geopolitical competition without having asked for the spotlight. As a self-governing territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland has spent decades carefully building its political identity, democratic institutions, and sense of national dignity. The sudden assertion by a global superpower that it needs Greenland is therefore not just a diplomatic provocation, but a direct challenge to Greenland's right to define its own future. From Greenland's perspective, there are potential positives embedded within this unwanted attention. Strategic importance brings leverage. Global powers rarely compete over places that lack value, and Greenland's geographic position and natural resources give it bargaining power it has never possessed before. Interest from the United States, and indirectly from Europe, China, and others, creates opportunities for investment, infrastructure development, and economic diversification. For a territory heavily dependent on fishing and financial support from Denmark, resource development could, in theory, accelerate Greenland's long-term ambition of greater economic self-sufficiency and eventual full independence. Rare earth minerals, in particular, represent a double-edged promise. Properly managed, they could provide Greenland with revenue streams capable of transforming public services, education, and healthcare. They could also strengthen Greenland's voice internationally, shifting it from a passive subject of Arctic policy to an active participant in shaping it. Some Greenlandic leaders see this moment as a chance to renegotiate their position in the world on their own terms, but the negative consequences loom just as large, if not larger. The most immediate cost is political pressure. When powerful nations frame Greenland as a strategic necessity, the space for genuine self-determination narrows. Decisions that should belong solely to Greenlandic voters risk becoming hostage to external interests. Even offers of partnership can carry implicit pressure when they come from a superpower whose military and economic reach dwarfs that of a small Arctic population. There is also a cultural and social dimension that often goes unnoticed in geopolitical debates. Greenland's population is small, with deep-rooted indigenous traditions and a close relationship with the land. Rapid militarization or large-scale resource extraction threatens not just ecosystems, but ways of life. Arctic environments are uniquely fragile. A single major industrial accident or environmental miscalculation could have irreversible consequences for communities that depend on fishing, hunting, and unspoiled natural systems. Security rhetoric further complicates Greenland's position. Being labeled strategically essential can turn a homeland into a potential target. In any future great power conflict, Greenland's military installations and infrastructure would become high priority objectives. What external actors view as defensive assets may translate locally into heightened risk and permanent insecurity. Greenlanders did not choose to become a frontline territory in global rivalry, yet strategic narratives increasingly place them exactly there. Politically, Greenland's leadership has responded with clarity and restraint. Officials have emphasized openness to dialogue while firmly rejecting threats, coercion, or unilateral claims. This balanced stance reflects a careful calculation. Greenland needs international partners, but it cannot afford to surrender its autonomy in exchange for security guarantees or economic incentives. Every statement reaffirming that Greenland's future must be decided by its own people is not symbolic. It is a defensive act against becoming a bargaining chip in negotiations conducted elsewhere. The solution for Greenland lies in institutional strength and international legitimacy. By anchoring its position in international law, democratic norms, and multilateral frameworks, Greenland increases the cost for any actor seeking to bypass its consent. Strengthening ties with Denmark and the European Union, while maintaining open but principled engagement with the United States, offers a path that preserves agency without isolation. At the same time, Greenland faces an internal reckoning. Strategic importance demands strategic governance. Decisions about mining, military access, and foreign partnerships must balance economic necessity against long-term sovereignty and environmental stewardship. Transparency will be critical. Without it, public trust could fracture, making Greenland more vulnerable to external influence campaigns disguised as economic opportunity. Greenland's challenge ultimately is not how to avoid the world's attention, but how to survive it intact. The island now stands as proof that in the 21st century, even the most remote territories can become central to global power struggles. Whether Greenland emerges empowered or pressured will depend on its ability to assert one simple principle: that strategic value does not erase the right of a people to choose their own destiny. Denmark and Europe: alliance, loyalty, legal order, and the fear of precedent. For Denmark and its European partners, the Greenland controversy strikes at the heart of a system built over decades to prevent exactly this kind of confrontation. Greenland is not an abstract territory on a map. It is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, governed under a legal framework that grants extensive autonomy while preserving Danish sovereignty. When the President of the United States publicly questions that arrangement, the issue ceases to be bilateral and becomes a test of Europe's collective resolve, legal principles, and alliance discipline. From Denmark's perspective, the positive outcome of this crisis lies in the rare clarity it has produced. Copenhagen's response has been firm, public, and unequivocal. By rejecting any notion of annexation or coercion, Denmark has reinforced its commitment to international law and democratic norms. This stance has, in turn, triggered strong expressions of solidarity from across Europe. In a period when the European Union often struggles to speak with one voice, Greenland has become a unifying issue, one where sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the inviolability of borders are non-negotiable. There is also a strategic upside for Europe. The confrontation has forced European governments to reassess the Arctic not as a peripheral region, but as a core security interest. Investment in Arctic monitoring, defense coordination, and climate research is no longer optional. Greenland has become a catalyst for deeper European engagement in the High North, strengthening internal cooperation and reducing over-reliance on U.S. leadership in Arctic security planning. Yet the negative implications are severe and far-reaching. At the center lies the risk of alliance fracture. NATO is founded on mutual defense and trust. The mere suggestion that one member might threaten another undermines the alliance's credibility, not just internally, but globally. European leaders understand that if borders can be questioned within NATO, then the alliance's moral authority to condemn territorial aggression elsewhere collapses. This is why Danish officials have warned that a military move against Greenland would effectively signal the end of NATO as it currently exists. There is also the fear of precedent. Europe's modern security architecture was constructed in response to centuries of territorial conflict, allowing, even rhetorically, the idea that powerful states can claim smaller territories for security reasons risks reopening historical wounds. For countries on Europe's eastern flank, already facing pressure from Russia, the Greenland debate is not theoretical. It echoes patterns they recognize all too well. Politically, Europe faces a delicate balancing act. On one hand, the United States remains its most important security partner. On the other, Europe cannot afford to appear submissive when core principles are challenged. Excessive confrontation could deepen transatlantic rifts. Excessive restraint could be interpreted as weakness. The danger lies not just in what Washington might do, but in how other global actors might interpret Europe's response. The European Union's role adds another layer of complexity. While Greenland is not an EU member, Denmark is, and European leaders have framed the issue as one of continental stability. Statements reaffirming commitment to the UN Charter, sovereignty, and territorial integrity are not diplomatic boilerplate. They are deliberate signals aimed at deterring escalation. Europe's message is clear. Arctic stability must be managed through law and cooperation, not unilateral power. The solution Europe seeks is preservation through process. Rather than confrontation, European governments emphasize dialogue within established frameworks, NATO consultations, bilateral defense agreements, and multilateral Arctic forums. By embedding Greenland's status within legal and institutional structures, Europe raises the political and diplomatic cost of any attempt to alter it unilaterally. At the same time, Europe must confront its own vulnerabilities. Greenland's strategic importance exposes Europe's dependence on U.S. military infrastructure in the Arctic. Long-term stability may require greater European investment in Arctic capabilities, reducing the imbalance that gives Washington disproportionate leverage. Strategic autonomy, long discussed in abstract terms, suddenly becomes concrete. For Denmark and Europe, the Greenland issue is a warning shot. It reveals how quickly alliance assumptions can be tested when strategic interests collide. The outcome will shape not only Arctic policy, but the future of transatlantic relations. If Europe can defend its principles without breaking its partnerships, it will have achieved a rare geopolitical balancing act. If not, Greenland may mark the moment when unity began to fracture. NATO, global powers, and the Arctic. Escalation, influence, and the search for stability. Beyond the immediate triangle of the United States, Greenland, and Denmark lies a much wider and more dangerous arena, the Arctic itself. What was once a frozen buffer zone is rapidly transforming into a theater of strategic competition, and NATO now finds itself standing at the fault line. The Greenland controversy is not occurring in isolation. It intersects with broader global power shifts, drawing in Russia, China, and the fragile balance that has so far kept the Arctic relatively stable. For NATO as an institution, the situation exposes both strength and vulnerability. On the positive side, the alliance has mechanisms designed precisely to prevent conflict among its members. Consultations, collective defense clauses, and shared command structures exist to de-escalate disputes before they spiral. The firm statements from European leaders defending Denmark signal that NATO's core principles still carry weight. In theory, this collective posture should deter any unilateral action that risks internal confrontation. However, the negative consequences are potentially existential. NATO was never designed to manage a scenario where one member openly questions the territorial integrity of another. Even rhetorical pressure strains the alliance's credibility. If NATO cannot guarantee that its own members are safe from coercion, its deterrent power against external threats is fundamentally weakened. Adversaries do not need to wait for tanks to roll. They watch language, signals, and hesitation. Greenland has become a stress test, and the results are being closely monitored in Moscow and Beijing. Russia views the Arctic as a core national interest. It has expanded military bases, modernized Arctic-capable forces, and invested heavily in the Northern Sea Route. Any sign of discord within NATO creates strategic openings. If the alliance appears divided, Russia gains leverage, not only in the Arctic, but across Europe. The Greenland dispute, from Moscow's perspective, is less about the island itself and more about what it reveals: cracks in Western unity. China's approach is subtler, but no less consequential. Labeling itself a near-Arctic state, Beijing has pursued scientific research, infrastructure investment, and diplomatic engagement across the region. Greenland's resources are of particular interest to China's long-term industrial strategy. While China does not seek military control, it benefits enormously from instability among Western allies. A divided NATO creates space for influence operations, economic partnerships, and strategic positioning that would otherwise face coordinated resistance. For smaller Arctic nations, the consequences are deeply unsettling. The Arctic has long been governed by a fragile consensus emphasizing cooperation, environmental protection, and low tension. Militarization threatens to unravel that norm. Greenland's elevation to a strategic flashpoint risks dragging the entire region into a security dilemma where defensive moves by one actor are interpreted as threats by others, triggering escalation. The solution for NATO lies in reaffirmation and restraint. The alliance must draw clear internal red lines. Disputes among members must be resolved through dialogue alone. This requires disciplined messaging, behind-the-scenes diplomacy, and a shared understanding that unity itself is a strategic asset. NATO's credibility does not depend solely on military strength, but on predictability and trust. At the same time, NATO must adapt. The Arctic can no longer be treated as a secondary concern. Coordinated Arctic strategy, balancing deterrence, environmental responsibility, and diplomacy is essential. Multilateral engagement through Arctic forums, confidence-building measures with non-NATO actors, and transparency in military activities can reduce the risk of miscalculation. Ultimately, Greenland symbolizes a larger truth. The Arctic is no longer insulated from global rivalry. As ice melts and access expands, competition will intensify. The question is whether that competition will be governed by rules or driven by raw power. NATO's response to the Greenland crisis will send a message far beyond the polar circle about whether alliances can still manage ambition without descending into confrontation. Greenland and the future of power. Greenland is no longer just an island of ice and silence. It has become a mirror reflecting the tensions of a world where security, resources, and influence collide. For the United States, it represents strategic advantage. For Greenland, a test of sovereignty. For Denmark and Europe, a line that cannot be crossed. And for NATO, a measure of its own cohesion. The solutions lie not in force or pressure, but in cooperation, law, and mutual respect. As the Arctic warms, so do geopolitical ambitions. The question now is not who wants Greenland, but whether global powers can restrain themselves before competition turns into confrontation.